Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. Welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I am the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, as well as the Blended Podcast and the Blended Pledge as well. As you can see, I've got a brand new camera that I'm trying out for Thoughts and Coffee today. And so we've got a little bit of shifting I think we might need to do now that I'm looking at the screen, but I'm super happy to be here with you. We've got a really great guest with us today, and we're going to be talking about the electric boogie-woogie with USPS, and we're going to be talking about different freight modes as well. But first, I want to tell you a little bit of news that we just posted on my LinkedIn page today. I was on BBC News on Monday morning, very, very early for me. It was about 12:30 a.m. Eastern. And they had approached me on Friday to talk about the truckers' strike and the effects on supply chain. And so we just posted that onto my personal LinkedIn. So if you want to go and check out that video, I was on BBC News Monday morning and was very, very excited about that. So go and check it out. Let me know what you think. It was quite the experience. But let's first talk about, before we go into what's happening with Let's Talk Supply Chain, I do just want to give out a shout out to our sponsor, Emerge. Emerge is proud to partner with Thoughts and Coffee to elevate our combined focus on empowering and growing meaningful relationships in the freight industry. The first and only freight-specific RFP platform, Emerge is reinventing freight procurement by offering solutions that enhance the spot and contract procurement process, enabling shippers to make the most strategic decisions possible, saving invaluable time and enhancing productivity. Learn more at emergemarket.com/thoughts and coffee. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show. All right, let's talk about what's happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain. So, our brand new episode this week. This one was a lot of fun. We've got the video over on the Let's Talk Supply Chain YouTube page because I literally did this interview on site at the Manifest conference a couple of weeks ago and got a chance to interview Overhaul all about what they're doing in supply chain risk management. So go and check that out. It's episode 246, wherever you subscribe to the show, or you can go to letstalksupplychain.com, or you can go watch the video over on our YouTube page. So super excited for you to see that as well. What else have we got coming up? Oh, there you go. See, there's the video. Look, we did it all on site at the Manifest conference. That was a lot of fun. All right, so we've got some upcoming events. So this Wednesday, that's happening tomorrow, we are giving a free ebook away for all the attendees to our webinar tomorrow. The rules are changing, adapting to the global remote workforce. So we're going to be talking about expanding globally. We're also going to be talking about Zoom etiquette, right? And when you've got a remote workforce that is global, there's all sorts of different rules. And so we're going to be talking about that as well. So if you haven't signed up, go and sign up right now. AJ, if you can put the registration link in the comments, that would be great. We've also got, I'm going to be going on Let's Talk Ship with Trans Impact. That's happening on Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern as well. So I'll see you over there. We've got Purpose, Planet, Profit with Topple tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern, and they're going to be talking all about sustainability and blockchain. Of course, we've got Mercado. They had their first episode last week called First Things First. So if you missed it, go to the Let's Talk Supply Chain YouTube page. DC is coming up. I think she's coming. No, she was last Friday. Yes, go and check that out over on our YouTube page as well. Log Tech Live is the first Friday of every month. We've got No Bullshipping with Hope White. That's coming up the fourth Friday this month at 10 a.m. Eastern, where she is talking all about freight and logistics and drayage. We've got the Global Supply Chain Sustainability Summit Wednesday, March 9th. Coming in Hot is not happening this month, but she will be back next month. And then next week, I'm going to be at TPM Tech, and the week after at TPM, I'm going to be doing Woman on the Street interviews at the networking events. I'm going to be asking you things like, what Incoterm are you? Or how do you explain supply chain to your family? And then I'm also going to be hosting TPM TV. I'm going to be on stage for TPM Tech as well. So I cannot wait to see you all there. We've got a lot of fun things planned, and then of course thoughts and coffee. So that's it for today. I mean, or for Let's Talk Supply Chain this week, although we do have Blended coming up as well. And we've got culture and community episode for Black History Month. And that one is really, really insightful. So hopefully you can join us for that. All right, we are going to bring up our guest for today. So good morning, Elizabeth, all the way
Good
from
morning.
sunny California, where I'm going to be next week.
Amazing. Yes, it's not too sunny this morning. We've got a little overcast and it looks like a storm's coming in, but it's a bright morning over here. Thank you for having me. Excited to be joining you.
Yes, I'm so excited. So, why don't you introduce yourself for the audience? Let everybody know who you are, what you do, and we'd love to hear about it.
Absolutely. So I'm Elizabeth Karabetsos, our Director of Customer Success at Flock Freight. I myself, a Chicago native, but again, moved to San Diego about a year and a half ago to join the Flock family.
Nice.
Not sure if you could convince me to move back to the Midwest right now and deal with the snowstorms once again. But in total, I've been in the supply chain industry going on almost a decade here, which is just amazing. It's been a wild ride to say the least. But I myself, I would say, am extremely passionate about technology, right? And using that to digitally transform, right, the way freight moves. And so I know we'll chat a little bit more about it later, but thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here on Thoughts and Coffee.
Absolutely. And we had Flock Freight on the show just a couple of weeks ago. And so if you want to find out more about them, definitely go and check their episode out, which is over on the Let's Talk Supply Chain page as well. So really excited for you to be here. We've got lots of people tuning in. Good morning to everybody. I'm trying to get everybody up on the screen. We've also got Lou and Davin, Melanie, Sharif, Bally, Jeffrey, Rick. Over on my personal LinkedIn as well, we've got Sam too. So excited to have you all here today. All right, so what are we talking about first? We are talking about the poll, which I'm just trying to get ready. There's so much going on this morning. All right, so this is the poll that we asked you all last Wednesday, and it was what attracts you to participate in LinkedIn polls. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but on Let's Talk Supply Chain, we've been doing more polls than we have questions of the week because we got some feedback from the audience that this was just an easier way to participate because you could click a button, but you could comment if you really wanted to. And so we just wanted to get an idea of what kind of attracts you. And so we got some really great answers here. 58% of you said, I want to see the results. That's actually mine too. I don't know about you, Elizabeth. 26%, the topic is fascinating. 8% clever messages hook me. 8% says polls about polls get me. So Elizabeth, what do you think about this? Do you participate in polls? Do you like polls? How do they get you in?
That's a great question. I am part of the 8% that is hooked by clever messaging. I think, when you live in so many different social media platforms, right? And you're scrolling all day long. For me, there's got to be a trigger or something that really is luring me in, to be honest. So I was part of that 8%, funny enough. But actually, I was chatting with a coworker about this when I saw your message or the poll. I don't see too many polls in my feed. I wish there were more, to be transparent. So maybe I'm not looking in the right places or following the right pages, but I would like to see a few more populate in my feed. This is one of the few recently. So,
well, and it was interesting. If you guys haven't checked out this poll from last week, you might want to go and check it out because the comments we got were pretty interesting as well. So those numbers were interesting, but some of the comments, we're kind of all over the map. We like polls, we don't like polls, we only like polls if it's like this. So it's really, really interesting. And we're so glad that everybody sort of joined in and really gave us an idea of, what you like and what you don't like about polls. And feel free in the comments this morning to let us know if you like polls, if you don't like polls, and why you would participate in a poll, because we definitely want to hear from you on that as well. The other thing that happened over the weekend was that I I had a post. I did a post on Saturday. So here's the story. I was at the bank and I was getting some currency or some US currency for my trip next week. And all of a sudden, the lady down the way said, I work in supply chain. So obviously, my ears perked up and I was like, what? Because my husband's in the bank too. So I work in supply chain. My husband's worked in supply chain. Now this lady works in supply chain. I was like, all these supply chain people in one bank at one time is just mind blowing. And then the teller asked her when she asked her occupation. That's what she said. I work in supply chain. And then the teller said, "You're a teacher. You're a supply chain. You're a supply teacher." She's like, "No, no, no, no. I work in supply chain." And then the teller was like, "I can't find that in the system. Do you do procurement?" Which, when she said that, I was like, okay, at least they're asking about procurement. And then the lady said, I really don't know what else to call it. I do supply chain planning. So my thoughts after this was, okay, even after 2 years of supply chain being in the forefront, being in the limelight, we still don't have a box as an occupation on a lot of the forms. And so I posted about this. As you can see, we had a ton of reactions, a ton of comments. People were like, yes, this happens to me all the time. I have to say that I'm this, or I have to say that I'm that, because supply chain just doesn't come up. So Elizabeth, has this ever happened to you? And what do you think?
Absolutely. More times than I can count in my career in the supply chain world. I think, even myself, I think back to being in college, and I myself was victim of this. I didn't know what it was, right, until I educated myself and really got into the industry per se. But I hope it becomes more normalized. Definitely. I would love to see, obviously, everyone understand what supply chain, logistics, brokerages, right? All those buzzwords. I hope it becomes a little bit more socialized as time goes on. It seems like the year of COVID and everyone's packages getting delayed at the ports, all of a sudden people are starting to read up on it a little bit more and understand some of the buzzwords. But it's been definitely a common theme for myself over the past decade.
Yeah, well, we've actually had a couple of people tuning in on our YouTube page, Two Thoughts and Coffee, that aren't in supply chain, that just wants to understand a little bit more about supply chain because of the packages that
Right.
are being delivered to their door. And if you want to go and check out this post, we had a lot of really great comments. We had Tom going back and forth about a concert that was at a Dematic conference back in 2017, which ended up in pictures of Sheryl Crow and bringing people together after 4 years, which was amazing. And then Gary was going back and forth with a few people as well throughout that post. So we had a lot of fun with that post, and hopefully banks are listening, and hopefully people
Right?
with, the lists are listening and being like, oh, maybe we should put supply chain in some shape or form on our forms or in our system. So
Absolutely.
hopefully they will do that soon. All right, we are getting to our supply chain topics. Oh, actually, MTS, let's say this first. They won't understand it's a supply chain thing. You know what, MTS, I think I might have to turn that into another t-shirt on my website, because I do have it's a logistics thing. You don't understand it's a logistics thing. Maybe I need to put that one up there as well. Thank you for that. All right, let's get to our first article. So we have been promising you, talking about USPS and the electric boogie-woogie. Well, here we are. This is the article that we're going to be talking about first. And it's really about the fact that USPS is looking to, they're looking to replace their fleet. Now, they originally were going to look to replace their fleet with, I think gas vehicles. And then because of the mandate that Biden actually brought down, he said that all fleets acquired by the government need to have zero emissions by 2027. And so that kind of changed the game when they were looking to actually replace the fleet that are delivering all of those parcels and letters and things like that. But in order for them to do that, to go all electric, it's going to cost 3.3 billion. And even further on in this article, they were talking about it actually costing about $5.9 billion, because you've got the 3 billion going to the actual vehicles, and then I think you've got like 2 billion or something like that on charging stations, because
Wow.
then you've got to be able to charge the vehicles. So, and prior to reading this article, I read another article that says that USPS has lost 87 billion since 2007. So I'm just not like, I really want to see them go electric, but at the same time, this is a lot of investment. What did you think about this when you saw this, Elizabeth?
Obviously, the 3.3 billion jumps off the page, right? That's a huge
Mhm.
investment, right, that they're asking for to electrify that whole fleet, ideally in the next 5 years, and is no easy feat to do. I think I love the idea, right? I love that it's top of mind. I love that the Biden did roll down that executive order right across the government
Mhm.
to make that push and effort. I think myself being a part of a B corporation at Flock and really focus on sustainability, that is something that obviously is very important. And I'm always reading up on and thinking through. Um, I would love to see it happen, but I know, right, it's not going to be easy. There's going to be many more conversations and debates to come around how we get there, right? And the
Mhm.
approval process for making this happen. But it's top of mind, right? Not only for the government, USPS, but everyone in between, Coca-Cola to UPS, right? Even someone like myself, I've thought about since moving to California, purchasing an electric vehicle in the near future because it's just very relevant and top of mind these days.
Yeah, I think it's a really good mandate, obviously around the sustainability. I think,
Mhm,
from reading this article, USPS, I don't think gets as much money from the government as we
mhm,
think that they do. And so that's why this particular story has been sort of electrified, or
mhm.
brought out into the light a little bit more, because this 3.3 billion really is going to come from the government for them to be able to replace the fleet. Now, one thing that I do want to mention. So I do happy hour twice a month with my friends and family over in the UK. And one of the things that they brought to my attention on happy hour on Sunday is that the British government is actually going asking households that have purchased an electric vehicle if they can take back the power that they're using to power their vehicles. I know you're kind of like, really? That's actually a thing? I know, that was my thoughts, and then I read up on it. So if you go and Google the British government asking to take the power back, you're going
Oh,
to find these articles, and what they're talking about is paying them 60p, so kind of like 60 cents
mhm.
every. Is it? I don't know if it's. I don't think it's every hour, and I don't know what it's for, but like 60p to take some of the power back. But then my question is, when you wake up in the morning and you can't use your car because they've taken all the power away from your car, how much is that going to cost you because you can't get to work? So I'm just not entirely sure how all of this is going to work if everybody is worried about gaps in the power grid, and
Right.
how we're actually going to power these electric vehicles, because I'm sure this $5.9 billion after, the fleet and after the charging stations,
Oh, yeah.
what is it going to cost us in power?
Mm,
And you live in California,
yes.
and power, that's really something that is a bit of a struggle over there. So what do you think about that? I'm kind of throwing this at you, I know.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
what do
it's
you
just
think
like
of this
getting that
concept?
bill every month, I can tell you that, and I don't have an electric vehicle yet, but it's pricey to say the least. This topic is actually, really interesting because Flock has actually partnered with carbonfund.org, and we have created electric charging stations for truck drivers across the country. We've helped kind of aid that
Okay.
in our efforts where we're able to give them an option, right, to when they're sitting idle or doing their rest and reset on their hours, they don't have to, right, have the diesel running if they want to, say, use that their tractor trailer, have it on for television or radio or whatnot, by having those electric charging stations, which has been really nice, those hookups at the truck stops. But it's obviously something that we don't know the cost implications yet, right? When you think about the magnitude of everyone having electric vehicles, or, right, just in that story alone with USPS across the government fleets, right, to start, and then watching it trickle throughout the country with other companies and obviously users like ourselves, right, thinking about it. What does that cost look like? That's, I guess, still the question mark, right, to be determined. But it's I don't know if I'm ready for that new electric bill quite yet. So
Well, I've heard it doesn't go up that much. I mean, if anybody in the audience does have an electric
yes,
vehicle,
please. I would love
please
to.
let us know because I was kind of curious about that as well. When Tesla came out with the Model 3, I was one of the first people to put that down payment, the deposit down, because I was like, I want one of those. And then obviously circumstances changed over the next couple of years until they were ready. And so I never did get one, but I remember doing a lot of research on how much it was going to cost me every month. But anyways, so go and check out that article because it's really fascinating about how we can really or how they're prioritizing electric in the government fleets. All right, so the next article we are talking about flock freight and your technology, but what we're really talking about is the old way of doing things. So, one of the things that I like about this article is that you're talking about the traditional way of moving freight is by taking a load size, and that load size is determining the mode in which you're sending that product. So, either less than truckload, LTL,
Mhm.
truckload, TL, right? Or intermodal. And so you kind of break it down as to how we've been thinking about freight modes in the past and what the freight modes look like in the future with
Mhm.
AI and technology. And what you guys do really, really well is obviously that shared truckload concept. And so
Mhm.
not only are we reducing carbon emissions through that particular concept, which I'm sure you're going to talk about, but we're pooling shipments by using technology to be able to do that and therefore reducing even touch points on product. So tell me more about this.
Yes, absolutely. It's something obviously we're all very passionate about. This kind of goes back to, right, how do we use technology to fundamentally change, right, the way in which we move freight? We're
Mhm.
super passionate about that here at Flock. And, you know, yes, when I speak to shippers and customers, we've got 11,000 of them active, right, that I'm communicating with on a daily basis with our customer success teams. The reality is, right, they're used to two options: traditional LTL or a partial, and then truckload. But what about the shipments in between, right? Say, and kind of what we call, I would say, an ideal shared truckload. Think 10 to 44 linear feet, think 5 to 22 pallets, under 36,000 pounds, right? That is an optimal shared truckload. And most customers, right, they're paying that full truckload price, right? Because they don't have many other options. They've got to hit that must deliver by date for their customers and service it accordingly. And they're paying for air, right? And
Yes.
how do we, right, change that logic? How do we input all the different data points around their shipment, right? So pallets, linear feet, stackability, turnability, all the nuances, and then give them a price in our shared truckload model that really caters to how large that particular shipment is, right? And then hopefully, right, they trust us to service that for them. It goes into our algorithm and the robot, as we call it, right? And it gets paired and pooled with other customers to create these wonderful shared truckloads that we're then able to offer right to the carrier network and identify ways to make sure not only obviously our carriers are taken care of for running these multi-stop shipments, but then the customers feel as though they got a cost savings, right? They didn't have to pay for the
Yeah.
full truck. Or inversely, right? A lot of people who traditionally have moved LTL, they're going to pay, right, probably a premium moving up to shared truckload, but they're getting service, right? We're skipping hubs and terminals because it's a hubless experience. They are going to avoid typically damages. Once it gets loaded at the shipper, it's not going to get offloaded into a warehouse and reloaded and offloaded again and go all throughout the country. You can ensure, right? We promise to ensure that product's going to get there safely and within a reasonable transit time, right? To hit those expectations for that increased price, moving away from the LTL model. So for
Yeah.
our customers, it depends. What mode would you normally ship? And let's rethink how we can do this a little bit differently for you.
Yeah. The way you talk about it is a new business model. right?
Absolutely.
And how we're thinking about utilizing technology. And Imtiaz says it really well. New approaches are always welcomed, especially when it's backed by reliable technology, anything that eases the logistics and lead time, which is really true right now for a number of different reasons, right? I think
Mhm.
what you're bringing to the table is going to help with the driver shortage because now we're pooling
Sure.
freight together.
Yes. Less single
That
loads.
makes sense. Right, and you
Mhm.
don't have to do that on your own. I mean, most people, trying to move a less than truckload shipment isn't really thinking about who else can be in that truck with me,
Right.
and how do we move this the most economical, fastest way possible, and how can I kind of
Absolutely.
share that truckload rather than having that expense for myself? So you're cutting down carbon emissions, you're
Yes.
helping with the driver shortage, and so I'm sure, your customers are really just enjoying that sort of new business model and new way of thinking about freight.
Absolutely. We just kind of got done, as you could assume, with a bunch of Q1 or in Q1 reflecting back on annual business reviews and Q4 data and walking our clients through it, right? And they're amazed anytime, right? They're used to the typical data points, service, right? Or how much volume we did, the expense. But we go into depth, right? How many shared truckloads did they move with us? What was the cost savings, right? If that would have gone truckload and based
Right.
on kind of the data, what was that cost savings we created in their supply chain? Their eyes light up, I think, every time they see that metric. And then we go into, right, a lot of the sustainability component. So, how many hubs and terminals do we estimate that we skipped, right? Instead of moving traditional LTL, moving shared truckload, what was that impact we made? How many
Mhm.
less damages occurred on your freight? And then ultimately, right, what were the carbon emissions we were able to deliver back to your supply chain? And
Mhm.
our customers have loved seeing those reports, being able to put that back into their own value propositions, right? And the initiatives that they're doing this year has
Mhm.
been remarkable. It's I think one of their favorite topics of conversation anytime we walk into those quarterly business reviews.
Love that. Love that. So I do want to give a shout out to Ebonique. We've got Anthony. We've got Shelly. So many more people over on my personal. And MTS has already given me the 5-minute warning. All right. So we've got to get to our last article. So this one, I implore you
Right.
to go and read this article. It does go into depth on a couple of different players in the industry that I'm not going to go into in this conversation right now. What I want to focus on is that this particular article is written by a truck driver. And so we talk about the driver shortage, and
Mhm.
this puts a brand new spin on that driver shortage. Basically, what he's saying is listen, we've got a lot of really great men and women that want to drive trucks. The challenge is we're not getting paid for the hours that we're working. And so it just doesn't make economic sense for us to keep driving a truck. And so he talks about waiting time. He talks about not only traffic, but systems at the ports, and it's a direct threat to them making the money. And he's talking about how if they're considered independent versus employees, they don't get all the benefits that the employees get, and they actually end up spending more to be a truck driver than they actually get back to put food on their tables. And so this was an eye-opening article for me. I don't know what you thought about this, Elizabeth, but do you want to give us a bit of your perspective on what you took away from this article?
Absolutely. Our Omar's story was heart-wrenching to say the least. I think it
Mhm.
is very eye-opening, would encourage anyone in our industry, right, working with drivers specifically. There's many of us at Flock, our entire carrier department, right, that's on the phone with these drivers themselves all day long. But the thing I think that stood out to me, right, is he does call out in the very beginning, it's not for a lack of men and women who are willing to drive. It's how do we ensure they're fairly compensated for the work that they're doing? So
Yep.
um, I think a lot about our shared truckloads, to be quite honest, and how we're able to pool the revenue together from 2 to 3 different customers, right? And how do we therefore allow and take care of our carriers and drivers, owner operators to ensure that they're fairly compensated for the wait times, right? The transit in between multi pickups and the multi drops to ensure at the end of the day it's sustainable for them and they can continue helping our industry, right? And it's
Yeah.
essential. Sometimes I think we forget that, and
Mhm.
we almost need to read this article to be regrounded in some of these items. So
I love that you
um,
said that. Yeah.
It's important. It really is. I had to reread it a few times. It made me sad the first go through, but it's he calls out and he's very honest about things going on in our industry that we can't
Mhm.
ignore.
Yeah, and Chris, truck drivers and seafarers are the heart of the supply chain, yet they aren't compensated fairly for the hard work that they do. And that is exactly what he's talking about. He said, "You guys are
Mhm.
talking about us being essential workers, but you're not treating us like essential workers." So I
Right.
implore you to go and check out that article. We are coming down to the wire. I do want to let you know that Audrey is going to be back with me next week for Thoughts and Coffee. She's going to come in live from California because she's going to get to California just before I do. And then we are going to skip Thoughts and Coffee for March 1st, and we're going to be back for March 8th for International Women's Day. Plus, it is our 100th episode that we're going to be celebrating on March 8th as well. So that is going
Ooh,
to be a big, big, big show. You're not going to want to miss it. We've got some things planned. And as always, thank you so much for joining us today for the fastest 30 minutes in supply chain. Elizabeth, thank
of
you so much
course.
for coming on and talking to us about
Anytime.
what you guys are doing, sharing your perspectives. And we'll see everyone next week. Have a great week.